All right. So, before we begin, I want all of you to think of the word innovation as a ball. I want you to think of it now, and I want you to go back home and visually associate the word innovation with a ball. Done that? Great. Now let's get back to the story. During the first ever lockdown of 2020, like many of my friends, I was spending a majority of my time online. And by majority, I mean more than 95%. And one day, while casually scrolling through social media, I found a poster posted by the National Institute of Technology, NIT India, calling for students from grade 8 to 12 to submit their ideas for a technology competition called Young Techie 2.0. The selected national finalists would get mentored for 2 months by the student team at NIT, and at the end of 2 months, they would get to present their ideas to the professors. Now, because this was a national competition and the stakes were so high and I would actually get to have good guidance if I got selected, I thought that I'll give it a shot. Who knows how it'll work out, right? So I submitted the idea for a healthcare app that I had thought of one time and was churning at the back of my head, and it was called EpiHelp, which stands for Epilepsy Help. I ideated EpiHelp when I saw this viral trend on social media again, because I mentioned I spent a lot of my time on my phone. The trend involved using a disco filter. For those of you who don't know, a disco filter is exactly what it sounds like. It resembles a disco ball, where there are flashes of neon light as fast as 3 color switches per second. That's disturbing. As a neurotypical individual myself, what I thought was disturbing could be the difference between casually scrolling on your phone and a trip to the hospital for a person with epilepsy, where flashing videos such as those could trigger neural shocks and send them into epileptic attacks. And I thought, wait, this is a real problem with real consequences, and there is so much more content like this out on the internet, and practically no solutions whatsoever. So I thought I'd come up with the idea for an application, EpiHelp, which would use an algorithm to identify such triggers on one's social media feed, reduce its frames per second, reduce its contrast, and essentially stop it from inducing an epileptic attack. Now, somehow with this nascent abstract idea for an app, I actually got selected as one of the 7 national finalists at this competition. I was overjoyed, but there was just one minor issue. I had absolutely no idea how to code an app. Now, this moment in my life, I think, was very, very important. Because I could have just stopped right there, thrown my hands up in the air and said, I can't pursue this idea anymore because I don't know how to do it myself. But in that moment, I had this momentum. This is the kind of momentum you have when you know that you're solving a problem. When you're so far into a math problem and you're so close to the answer that you just don't want to stop, that kind of momentum. And so instead of quitting, I thought that I'm going to ask for help because this is a problem and I want to solve it. So I asked my friend Sasha, who is great at computer science, by the way, to help me get started with the app. Not just get me started with the app, but also teach me the basics of JavaScript and Python to start learning as we go. This is her, by the way, and that's all the complex stuff that she taught me on the whiteboard. Point being, not knowing how to code, but having an app idea can sound counterintuitive. But I had the ultimate goal of wanting to use technology to improve healthcare. And the vision was to help epileptic people browse the internet safely. By the end of it all, I didn't end up completely finishing the app. I'm actually still working on it. But I realized that now that I had actually created something innovative, now that I was actually called an innovator, that I was looking at innovation the wrong way this entire time. Why? Well, because innovation sounds and can be overwhelming. When I discovered my love for science and technology, I always felt this pressure to be creative, to do something different, to stand out. Like, have you ever been scrolling on Facebook and you see the news that a 13-year-old discovered the cure to cancer? Of course, not that, but something along those lines. And you felt really glad, but the next second, you felt insecure. Like, if a 13-year-old is out there discovering all those things, what am I doing with my life? I thought that all the time. And fortunately, or unfortunately, I'm a perfectionist, which means even if I did have an idea, a small idea or a big idea, unless I had a 50-step planned out agenda to start working on the idea, I wouldn't even begin. I always felt this pressure to be this child prodigy, to come up with the next revolutionary invention, because who doesn't want to be different, right? Innovation today is at the top of the list of skill sets that companies, colleges, workplaces are all looking for. But the truth is, you can't force creativity and one day just come up with the idea of the century. Because there are so many teen innovators out there today, young innovators out there today, even me, sharing my story, it's only natural to feel insecure. It's only natural to feel like any idea that you might have had may not be as great as theirs. And I'm not making this up. I conducted a survey with a lot of children of my age and found that 75% feel overwhelmed at the thought of innovation, at the thought of out-of-box thinking. Not just that, out of the same set of responders, 94% have had an innovative idea at some point in their lives, but 67% of those same responders never even started working on it. Forget starting and failing. They never even began working on the idea because they felt overwhelmed at the thought of innovation. I was a part of the overwhelmed 75% as well, truly. But when I took the leap of faith with EpiHelp, when I applied, even though I didn't know how to code, I got to be on the other side, with the innovators. And I realized that I was making a bigger deal of innovation than it really is. And at all those hours with the competition and the national qualifiers and spending all that time with other people across the country, I found out that some of the best innovators in our country are just problem solvers. And that innovation is just a fancy name for problem solving. And you might say, Shreya, that's all well and good. If you're saying that problem solving is the first push towards innovation, all that's fine, but how do we become problem solvers? Great question. Well, the thing is, we're all problem solvers. You, I, any great inventor out there. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it's true. The only difference is that we don't solve problems that we think is not our problem. And that's what we need to break out of. Innovation is not a eureka moment that just happens to you. It's the polar opposite of that. When I started EpiHelp, it wasn't just one life-changing idea that came to me in a dream. It came from small pushes along the way. I used to be one of those kids who participates in every competition that comes in my way. A science competition, techno competition, art competition, whatever. And all of that built a small habit in me that just kept growing over time. The habit of problem solving. Innovation is nothing but embracing that habit of problem solving. And take it from someone who's attended a dozen odd competitions over the last 4 years, you don't even have to be a part of those competitions to become a problem solver. You just need to start noticing that there are problems around you that need solutions. And you can come up with those solutions once you get into the momentum of starting to notice that these problems exist in the first place. And when you do that, when you begin to feel that unrest when you see a real-life problem and you really, really want to solve it, like I felt with EpiHelp, that's when big things start to happen, and the ball starts rolling. Which brings me to a very real and a very serious physics phenomenon that I've taken the liberty to discover, the inertia that innovation holds. Or as I like to call it, Newton's laws of innovation. It's a completely original name made by me. Do you all know what inertia is? Let me just have a quick physics class with everyone right now. Inertia is the property of matter by which it either continues in its state of rest, like a ball lying on the ground, inertia of rest, or continues in its state of motion, like a ball rolling on a smooth surface, inertia of motion. I titled this talk The Inertia of Innovation, but I didn't specify which, because it's both. There is an inertia of rest to innovation when you don't know where to begin at all, like the 67% that didn't even start working on their ideas. But trust me when I say this, the only thing standing between you and you becoming an innovator is to get the ball rolling. And that inertia, the inertia of motion, is the inertia of innovation that will build in you a lifelong, passionate innovator. And when you go back home today and think of innovation as a ball, because you will, because I asked you to, I want you to take a good look at that ball. Give it a little nudge, a little push of problem solving. Break it from its inertia of rest. And once you set that into motion, you will see big things happen to you. Thank you.